to PopCultX. This is episode 38 with the Gen X guys, myself, Gabriel, and co-host Danny, bringing you another episode, which is weekly. Every week you can find us here talking about everything pop culture, and we'll go ahead and get started this week. It was a good one, so let's get right to it.
Did you just rebrand us as Gen X guys?
Yeah, we're the Gen X guys. That sounds like we're like plumbers or something. When you have a leaky faucet, call the Gen X guys.
Call the Gen X guys. That's fantastic. Yeah. Yes,
we're the best plumbers in town. We'll
get to the root of all your problems. Yes.
Yeah. So, TV wise, movie wise, what's going on? What'd you see this week?
Well, this week I watched a few things. I finished up of course, like I said, mentioned last week, the Hawkeye series. So that finally released their season finale, and it's fantastic. Love the show. Tell everyone I know to go watch it. Whether they do or not, I don't know. You should watch it at home. Go do it right now after us. But it's just, so when the Avengers first came out, almost 10 years ago now, right? In 2012, I think. It was, I didn't really know too much because I've been behind on my comic book viewing or reading. So I didn't know too much about Hawkeye and whatnot. And I always slowly just watched this character evolve. And he was always just, the normal guy. Yes, he was a great shot. He had a bag of trick arrows, but it was always just, he didn't have the superpowers. He wasn't a super soldier. He couldn't fly. He wasn't a god. He was just an average Joe. And then as his the story arc evolved, and he saw that he is also a family man, and he had this family which he keeps separate, which is cool because if you were involved with the Avengers, I would want to keep that part of me separate as well. Yeah. But the series itself kind of brings it all together, Hawkeye. So they involve. You learn more about his wife, and they kind of tell what she's doing or kind of give her a little bit of a backstory. I think it ties into maybe a little bit of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I haven't watched, so I don't know. But it's just so great. I mean, and then with introduction of Kate Bishop and how he really struggles to become that mentor, but then he finally accepts it, and it's just awesome to watch them, especially since I'm a huge fan of the Matt Fraction, David Aja, Hawkeye series comic book. So much fan. I even went and bought the whole, this 500-page book, which has the whole saga of Barton and Bishop. And it's just to see that from the print onto screen, know where it came from. It's just really cool. And I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but go watch it. Please go watch it.
Yeah. The thing that I just found out today on Twitter was that Kate Bishop is now rumored to be in Doctor Strange.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The new Doctor Strange film, and also reportedly going to be in the Young Avengers, which I know America Chavez is going to be in the Doctor Strange. America Chavez is in the Young Avengers. So I think they're going to tie that again. That would really excite me because I'm not necessarily super big fan of Hawkeye, and I have yet to watch that series. But I am a really big fan of the Young Avengers and that team.
So, I have a question real quick. Sorry to interrupt you about the Young Avengers, just because you're talking about that. So I was looking through the Marvel app and I saw the Young Avengers, and I was like, oh, that's what Gabe's talking about. But it looked like they were just young versions of the characters we already know. But that's not what you're kind of talking about. You're talking about
that might be something else. Right? This is a newer version of the Avengers that are America Chavez,
the new recruits, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Okay. They're not new characters. They're not young versions of the older characters. So it's not like the Wonder Years or the early years of the Avengers. Which
baby I'm sure
Captain
America.
They have the baby X-Men, so maybe I don't know. So I'm excited about that. I did see Spider-Man this weekend over the Christmas weekend, and it was an amazing film. It really is good. It did make me a little emotional at certain points, without doing any spoilers for people out there, because there are people that are still upset about any sort of plot points that are being released. But I would say that there is at least maybe 5 times in the movie that I was glad that I was wearing a mask, because I did get a little teary-eyed. So I was able to like push the mask up into my tear ducts to like
Nice.
gather any wetness that was coming out of my eyeballs, and I had a hoodie on, so I was able to kind of cover up. But it was emotional because Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters. I've really have enjoyed the evolution of all the Spider-Man films. Going back, decade or so, with all the different actors that have portrayed him, all the different, characters, the villains, all of that. Really big fan.
Well, that's not a spoiler anymore, so we could talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously there is, two other Spider-Men that are involved in the movie, and the villains come back. Are brought into the plot, and so it was really enjoyable to watch. It was definitely moments where the fanboys in the audience started cheering when certain characters came on the screen. So that's fun. Like that's the part of going to the movie theater that I really enjoy, is seeing the movie with people who love the characters, who invested lots of time in reading the comic books or seeing the other movies. And it's like being a little kid and seeing your superhero up on screen, even though you may be like a 44-year-old man. It's just exciting, and it's a good feeling to be able to see that. There are, like every Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, there are post and credit scenes that give us a hint of what's to come. And we obviously know Doctor Strange is coming, so that's not a surprise or anything like that. But it does tie some things in with some big possibilities that will be coming soon. And we already know America Chavez is going to be in it. We know the actress is playing her, so I got a little bit of a clip of that, and I'm really excited to see Latina actress being portrayed in another MCU movie, like Zoe Saldana and Salma Hayek. I just keep it coming. I read today that there is a possibility they might be doing a Ghost Rider movie, and there's been many iterations of Ghost Rider, many different types of Ghost Rider. People who have been the Ghost Rider. One of them being a Mexican American kid from LA. That's the one that I'm rooting for that gets the movie.
That'd be fun.
I think that it'll be, I mean, we've already had a couple Ghost Rider movies, so I'm really excited to see what they could do with like a Latino as Ghost Rider.
We don't talk about those Ghost Rider movies.
Yeah.
They never happened. No.
Yeah. And if you actually want to go back and like kind of get reacquainted with the character, there's a run on, where am I reading it? I don't remember if I'm reading on Comixology or the Marvel digital app. But it's the run starting in 2006 with Ghost Rider. Okay. And it's Johnny Blaze, and he's battling an angel who is trying to overtake heaven. And it's kind of, it's within the horror genre. Like it's got some kind of scary aspects to it. Obviously Ghost Rider, uses the power of hell, all of that stuff. So it's kind of like obvious that it's going to have a little bit of a horror spin to it. But it's really, really cool artwork, and the writing is really good. It's almost, I would like kind of compare it to like a Quentin Tarantino movie, like a pulp. I use that term. Sometimes people get mad because they're like, oh, that's not really a pulp book or a pulp fiction type, but sort of that like exploitation era of grindhouse movies, but in a comic book. So I think you would enjoy it, because I know that you like Quentin Tarantino and some of those same films that I like. And that's kind of what it reminds me of. Like, it's kind of like violent. It has a little bit of a horror aspect to it, but not, over the top. The characters are really cool. It has nuns that are practicing kung fu. It has like nurses that are evil and like battle in like their sexy nurse costumes. So it's like, it literally, I could see Quentin Tarantino adapting that run of Ghost Rider into a movie. It actually would be really exciting. So I recommend that to anyone that's not really familiar with Ghost Rider. It's a really good run to go back and acquaint yourself with that character.
That's cool. When I finish up my Daredevil that I'm currently reading, the one that started in 2019.
Yeah.
It's I'm not sure if you've read that or not. It's fantastic. See,
there's a
why
lot.
didn't you tell me earlier that there's so many good comic books out there? My goodness, it's
There's
just great. The story is so well written, and that's one thing that is really keeping me involved with it. I mean, it's when I think Kingpin becomes mayor of New York City, right? So it's just really cool. So that's what I'm reading right now too.
Cool. Yeah. I'm always excited when someone gets into comic books and starts reading because, I mean, they as much as the movies are making a bazillion dollars, the format of the comic book itself is something that I'm still a fan of, like the artwork and the storytelling. So I want the popularity to translate to the comic books because I want them to be able to still strive and it still being a valid format for that storytelling. And not just for movies. So definitely recommend everyone to go to their local comic book store, buy comics, go to the trade paperback area where they collect issues or popular runs of the series. So you can kind of just read. It's a good entry point where you could go, what are the Avengers about? Let me get this trade paperback. Or what about Daredevil or Wonder Woman? And it's a good, like a beginning and an end almost where you can read it and get really acquainted with those characters. So,
which for me is why the Marvel Unlimited or the Comixology or even to an extent the DC version apps are so great because you have access to 25,000 plus comic books right on your device. So if you're like me who didn't really grow up reading comic books because I didn't really have the funds to go read them, I wasn't really like some other people at the store just browsing until you got kicked out or whatnot. To go back and be able to read these and really explore all the different kind of stories that are out there. It's great. Really great. I did watch Venom though.
Oh, nice. Okay. How was
Venom 2? I guess Let There Be Carnage. That was fun. So if you're a fan of the first Venom, you'll be a fan of the second one. I really enjoyed the banter between Venom and his host, Eddie Brock. It's just the back and forth. That's just what cracked me up the whole movie. I mean, the story itself, it was good, but it was just the back and forth between them that really kept me involved in the movie. And whenever I hear Venom's voice and his little quips and whatnot, I always picture Duffman from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
So I just got a kick out of it every time he would say a one-liner, and it was just like, hey, that's like Duffman. So I don't know.
Well, and to be honest, that's the reason why I haven't watched it is because I'm not a fan of the voice. It's such an odd. It's like it's kind of unintelligible for me. Like where you really kind of have to like concentrate on what he's saying to understand him, and it's too cartoony for me. I don't know what I would want Venom to sound like, but it's like it makes you laugh when you hear it. But then, like, do I want to sit down and watch an hour and a half of like that voice? It's just like a little much. I don't know.
I can understand what you're saying there, but it's worth it. I think it really is.
I love the actor that plays Eddie Brock. Like he's one of my favorite actors.
Tom Hardy's really good. Yeah.
And so I will watch it. It's just that voice really is.
Put subtitles on and mute it.
Yeah, like it's just like it's too. I don't know. Like there's something about it. It's sort of like the guy that does the voice on Big Mouth.
I know you're talking Jason Sudeikis. Yeah, I know you don't like
Jason Sudeikis. It's
no, not Jason. Yeah, you're right.
It's like Armenian or something. Like
yes. Oh,
Tavakian or something. I don't know, but his voice just annoys me, and that's. It would be really funny to find out that he's like the voice of Venom or something. You're like, oh, that's why I don't like Venom's voice.
And we've had that conversation before earlier in our podcast run that you don't really like him, right?
Yeah, I know. Sorry about it. But another movie that I saw that does have really great voice actors in it is Disney's Encanto, which is on Disney Plus. I was at my mother-in-law's, so we were watching like family friendly. Actually, we didn't watch a movie. We watched one movie that was very much not family friendly. And then we watched a Disney Plus movie because I'm like, oh, let's be nice and watch a family friendly movie for her because
Wait,
the
what
first
was
one was
the
definitely out.
unfamily friendly movie?
So the first
That's
one
what I
that we
want to know.
watched was The Bitch That Stole Christmas, and it's RuPaul and a bunch of drag queens like do a Hallmark Christmas movie, but
Nice.
with drag
Okay.
queens. And so the first thing she's asked is like, "Is that a man?" And it's like, "Yeah, that's a man, and that's a man. That's also a man. That's not a man. That's a woman. That's a cis woman." And so it was kind of funny watching with her, but I think she did enjoy it. I mean, she's no prude or innocent. Um, but it was definitely something that was not a traditional Christmas movie, which
Right,
I
right.
like. It was kind of hilarious. It was funny. I think it's a classic. It's sort of like National Lampoon's
Yeah.
Christmas, whatever that is,
Vacation. Yeah.
special. But yeah, that's not necessarily a family friendly. It's very, college humor. That's kind of what I like to watch during holiday
I guess
season. So
sometimes when they're a little more outlandish, they resonate more because it's not the traditional, like you said, lovey dovey.
yeah. And I also, so anyway, so getting back to the Disney family friendly one is I watched Encanto, which is really good. So the let me say what I liked about it, what I loved about it actually. The visuals are really great. It's very colorful. The music is great. Lin-Manuel Miranda again doing a fabulous job of
Yeah.
creating music and lyrics. I think Carlo Vives has also worked with him on the music.
Okay.
Great music. The actors were great. John Leguizamo's in it. A lot of Colombian American actors portrayed the characters. The characters themselves were very diverse.
Okay.
There were representation of like pretty much a lot of the spectrum of being Latinx or Latino, whatever you want to use the term. You had people that were Afro Latino, people that looked maybe a little bit more what we would consider traditionally Latino, which is not really what I want to say, but the regular people that you see that are like light brown skinned people, but you also had dark skinned people with curly hair, people with straight hair. So it very much reminded me of my own family. That just have a variety of different people, different looks, personalities. The thing that was interesting about this one, and I won't go too deep into the plot because I don't want to ruin it for you, so you can watch it. But whereas Coco had like the really great Nana, like Nana Coco, she was like the good Nana. This one has sort of the not so nice of Abuelita, like she's kind of like the mean grandmother,
Okay.
and it reminded me again of mine because I had like an angel perfect grandma and then I had a not so nice grandmother. And so it was very accurate. And I even teased my dad about it of like it being super accurate. And it talks to the expectations that families, specifically within the Latin culture or Latino culture, have for their children and have like very high expectations. And sometimes it being sort of, it being very traumatic for an individual to not meet those expectations and being kind of a black sheep or being like not the golden child. Very much true to my family and my grandmother, having favorites and having people that weren't favorites and having people that were ostracized. And so it comes down to the plot comes down to like intergenerational trauma and how the family deals with that and how it overcomes it. So it's almost like a really mature topic for Disney to kind of tackle in a cartoon.
That is, yeah. Wow.
But they do it in a really smart way. It's still family friendly. It's still fun. But it does have like a really important message, and it's cool. Like, I mean, you don't really get that sort of depth from a cartoon. So I really did like that. Some of the writing and the plot, is not the greatest. I wouldn't say it's like the best film of 2021, by no means, but it is very entertaining. The music is entertaining. I think people will watch it and be very entertained by the music and the colors and the animation style. Lots of funny characters. So, kudos to them. And again, like Lin having another knock out, just
what
adding into
happens
his
when he doesn't live up to that standard, the bar he keeps setting. I mean, I just thought about that right now. It's like, has he had a bad, film or show or writings or anything? It's like, I can't think
I'm not
of one
like a
yet.
super fan of his, so like I can't say I've seen everything. I mean, some people do think that Hamilton is overrated, but overrated is not bad. It's just that
Right.
it's super hyped. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't think you can say that he's done anything bad. I mean,
know,
it'll happen where, it just, you can't please everyone. And, maybe when he gets older, he'll want to do things that, maybe are a little bit more experimental or not like so expected of him. And maybe, I think that's where people, you always get artists that like become, they're true to who they are. They start, but then they get an audience that starts to expect the same thing because people want the same. They don't necessarily want to see them recreating the wheel every time they see their film. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of want to see the exact same thing over and over again. So I think eventually he'll come to a point where like he does do something that's really unexpected. And then some of his fans may say like, oh, I didn't like that. But he's such a talented person. I think that, I am betting on him being, in the top for decades. Like he's our new genius. I mean, he's just an icon. He's going to be putting out good stuff forever and such a good role model for the Latino community. It's amazing that we have someone so talented like that. So it's great.
Yeah, I'm glad he's leading the march. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and another thing that's kind of interesting is it's kind of controversial is that some of the characters in Encanto are being labeled as gay by some people in the gay community. And there are some people that are like accepting it, like, oh yeah, that character does make sense if they were gay. And other people are like, you know what, like this is about family trauma and how it impacts other characters. Like, don't add more to it that's not there just because you want to see that. I kind of see it both ways. I think that if a character, if you want to see it in that light, if you see a character in that movie and you think, oh, that's very similar to my experience as like maybe a lesbian, then good. And that's how you can relate to the character. I think that if it has not been said by the writer or the filmmakers that particular character is lesbian, let's say, then I mean, it can live in like that in your head. It doesn't necessarily need to be validated for it to have that impact on your life and for it to speak to your life experiences. And then on the flip side of that, like if you don't want to see it that way because it doesn't relate to you and you want to look at it at a different way, like go ahead. That's the great thing about art is that it's subjective. And if you relate to a character that speaks to you and your experience, cool. But because humans are humans and they want to get on Twitter and make things black and white, people are like, nope, this person's definitely, a lesbian. Nope, this person is not a lesbian. It's like, it could be both. And especially if the filmmakers leave it vague and they don't define the character's sexuality, why can't it be both? If for one person, it can be a lesbian, for the other person, it can't. It could just, speak to the Latino, family experience. So that's something that's kind of interesting. I think that people need to stop thinking in such, black and white terms of like, it has to be this way. A part of me thinks that it's because people are so desperate for representation within popular culture that they want to see a character that's a lesbian, that, in a Disney film, they want to see, a Latino character and they don't want it to necessarily be labeled as lesbian. Not that they're saying that would be negative, but they're like, we want it to just be about the Latino family.
Right.
It's just, let it speak to you the way it speaks to you. And if someone doesn't see it that way, it's fine. Just enjoy it, and I think that's where like fan fiction and is really kind of cool, is that if you want to write a fan fiction story on a character that you think might be LGBT character, do it. And then you'll find other people that like it. They'll read it. And to you, in your little community or your bubble, it can exist in that way. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, but you don't have to necessarily like go back and say like, oh no, Pinocchio was definitely, you know, a bisexual puppet. Like, you know, whatever it like, you can see things from your perspective. And because I think that because in storytelling, like the underdog or the person that is facing trauma or an obstacle can be applied to so many things, right? Like you can compare it to being a member of the LGBT community. You can compare it to the Latino experience. You can compare it to being Jewish. And it's because we are all part of that minority experience where we feel oppression and we're overcoming that. But a character doesn't necessarily need to say like, this is specific to the Jewish community. It can be applicable to everyone. And that's why I like that it's kind of vague, because then a lot of people can relate to it in their own way.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I mean, a well-written story will, I guess, and most times leave it up to the viewer to interpret it and how they want to apply it to themselves and how they can see themselves in that character, even if it's a different race or a different gender or whatnot. They can still feel those maybe the odd man out type thing where they can still relate to who that person is because they've been through something similar. And even if it's not directly, but it's still something similar. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So on the flip side of diversity in films and television, and actually, you know, it doing a good job, we have what is it called? And just like that. Yeah. And just like that, Sex and the City, whatever you want to call it, is the polar opposite of Encanto, in which they're doing such a horrible job of bringing in people of color and of different, you know, gender expressions, of different, you know, facets of life into their show. It's so, I just recently watched the most recent episode, and one of the characters who is sort of the upper crust society girl who's married to a Jewish man who converted to Judaism is wanting to become a friend with a black person. That's like the story arc is, I want a black friend, which is already kind of cringy, but it is whatever. So then you have her forcing her husband to read about black culture so that he can carry a conversation with black people. You have her worried about having a party and only having one black friend, so they're trying to make other black people come to their party. And then she goes to a party, sees a black woman, calls her the wrong name, the implication being like, oh shit, like, am I making that person think that I think all black people look alike? And it's so bad. And I already talked about this on one of our previous episodes, where I'm like, it's like, it's almost telling people of color, this is why white people don't try to hang out with you, because it's so hard and it's so like, you make it so difficult for us to be your friend, because we have to find our way through this difficult passage of how to communicate with you. And it's like, why can't you just talk like a normal person? Like, I don't know why they're making it so weird and so cringy for these people to have like people of color in their life, like, or a lesbian or a non-binary person. Like, every episode is them doing something super awkward and cringy. And I'm like, I don't get why this particular character, she's an art dealer. So she's dealt with people, artists, gallery owners, like art dealers. You don't mean to tell me that she hasn't dealt with anyone that's African American, that's you know, Latino, that's gay, lesbian, whatever. And that now she's like, oh, I don't know how to talk to them. And like, and it's so weird. And that these characters were like in New York for the majority of their life, and they're now in their 50s and 60s, and they're now starting to get friends within, you know, a different in a different community. It's so weird. It's so like, I would have rather them just been like, oh, this is my longtime friend that I've never introduced you guys to. We've been friends since high school. Now let's just go on with the plot and have a black person in it. Versus like them showing this path of them trying to make friends with people. It literally, that's the plot, is like, let's see how these people can become friends with a non-binary person and African American woman and a Middle Eastern woman. Let's see how that plot plays out. And it's like, it's so weird. Like, why is that what they chose to do with these characters that they've invested all this time and money and effort into developing, and it has such a huge fan base, and it's the worst. It's literally probably the worst thing I've watched this year.
Oh man!
And I keep watching it because I keep thinking like it's got to get better.
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better.
Like it has to have like a breakthrough where I'm like, oh, there's the humor, there's the irreverence that they've had before, and like the sexiness or the whatever. And it doesn't come. It's just like one cringy thing after the other, and it's bad. It's honestly, like, I'm going on the record and saying it's probably the worst show of 2021 by far.
Wow.
It's just horrible.
Is it a different set of writers than the original show?
I don't think so. Like, I looked at the writer, and there was, I think this last episode, I noticed that it wasn't, I think the guy who does it is the creator is Michael Patrick King, or MPK. And he's the creator of the Sex and the City show, writer, and frequently I think the director too. And one of the things that I was talking about today is even the actresses, like, they know that character. They played them for like a really long time, right? Why wouldn't they speak up and say, this doesn't seem true to their voice or their character? Like, Charlotte has lived in New York and has been in circles of artists and influencers, and you know, I think she's on the board of directors of the Met. You mean to tell me that character would not know how to talk to Black people? Like,
right?
It's weird. So silly. It's so silly and so ridiculous that the other character, the lawyer, she's also like stepping over her own words and doesn't know how to talk to a Black person, and it's like super awkward. And it's like, do I have a different alternate reality multiverse version of New York that I went to? Because when I went to New York, it's super
a very diverse place. Yeah.
Yeah, you have Jews, you have Latinos, you have Afro-Latinos, you have Hasidic Jews, you have regular old white people, you have Mexicans, Colombians, Haitians. Like, you know, like, I saw everyone. And that was like on one trip to like the bagel place, like, let alone to a museum or anywhere else. Like, you can't help but be surrounded by a diverse group of people. But yet these characters somehow magically didn't. Like, it's so odd. It's weird. It's so cringy. It's the worst. And I don't want to say it like in a politically correct, like, oh, like, you know, their intentions are to try to bring diversity into it, because I think they listened to the criticism that so many shows from the 90s were so whitewashed and just so white. Friends, Seinfeld, Sex and the City. And it was like, okay, well, let's try to bring, but like, they could have just done it in such a better way. And like, I don't know how they went about it. I would love to hear if they brought in, you know, young people of color, you know, lesbians, gay people, non-binary people, and said, this is how we talk. This is what our community is about. Like, or if they just assumed like, oh, this is how people talk. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, or even just stick to older people having sex. Like, they're all coupled up, you know, Carrie, her husband died, but show them like what it's like for an older couple to have a relationship, and, you know, they can still be sexy and, you know, but it's a mess. I really don't recommend anyone watching it, especially if you're a fan. I haven't searched the opinion of the people who've been watching it and maybe who fans are. It has to be horrendous. I really can't. I would be shocked if I'm the only one that is this disappointed and disgusted, or just ashamed and embarrassed to be watching it, because it's so
someone
bad.
Says, did you watch it? You're like, no.
It's bad. Like, I know so many people that have just like, I watched the first and second episode and I stopped because I just couldn't watch it. Like I couldn't continue.
Wow.
And I'm really hoping that somehow it magically changes in like the 5th, 6th episode. I don't even know how many episodes they're going to do, and if they're going to continue, if their intentions were that maybe it was going to keep going for multiple seasons. I'm sure HBO is going to be like, sorry, you guys did not.
Can't do that.
Nope. So, I'm sorry for that. I feel bad for the actresses because, roles for women of that age are few and far between. And I had really high expectations of them being able to kind of see their adventures in their 50s and how that could have been really interesting, but they really dropped the ball on this. So,
oh man, you said 50s and 60s, and it just reminded me of that show. I think it's on Netflix, Grace and Frankie. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you've seen that show or not, but it's quite interesting as well.
Yeah, I think that they could have done something similar to Big Mouth, where it's like, reliving the puberty era of your teenage years, and like how hilarious is that, and share with younger people and, kind of celebrate what it's like to be someone who's 50, that, you've worked hard, you have like a certain level of success that young people don't have, right. You own your house, you have your career, whatever. And how you battle, you keeping your romance in your relationship, or how you battle your grown teenage children and their emerging identities. And there's certain glimpses of that within the show. Some of the characters, they have a teenage son, they have young children, and they sort of go into some of the obstacles of having that type of interaction with their kids. But it's like they're somehow focusing on the other, that I already mentioned. And, right. And it's like, I would have just much rather them have introduced the characters. This is, the new character that's going to be on board. Let's just go on with the plot. Right. Similar to the way you make friends in real life. Like you integrate them into your life, but you don't do the things that these characters, like, I don't ever recall sitting down and like, okay, I'm going to have dinner with Danny and Christina. I'm going to go have to read an article about the history of Jewish literature, just in case he brings up how to be a Jew. Who does that? Who does that?
I don't know that.
You know what I'm saying?
Obviously, the people in the show. I don't know.
Like,
or maybe the writers do. I don't know. That's because you're supposed to write what you know, and maybe that's what they do. I don't know. That's just weird. I mean,
bringing my dad over to your guys' houx. Dad, don't bring up the. Don't bring up the Holocaust or anything. Ixnay on the Holocaust day.
I know you like to get into Auschwitz talks here, but don't do it. Don't do it. Let's not bring up Diary of Anne Frank this time around.
Yeah. Stick to hot topics, Dad. Yeah, but it literally is that. So anyway, it's horrible. That's on my list of the worst of 2021 for sure, number one. And just like that, they made it to the top of the list of the worst.
Congratulations, and just like that.
Yeah, congratulations, Sarah Jessica Parker.
Well, you said the list, so year-end list. So this is the last episode of 2021. So we were planning, everyone out there, to give you our great top 100 movies of the year. But we're not going to do that. We're going to spare you that. If you want to see those, if we get enough popular feedback or comments, say, hey, what were your favorite movies? We'll put them out in a blog post on our website. But what I would like to do, and I'm just kind of springing this on Gabe right now, is that I want to know how pop culture and our podcast has influenced him this year. And because I want to, and how it's what he's taken from it this year, and I'll give my little feedback too, and what he's looking forward to in the future. So as opposed to we're looking back at 2021, what are we looking forward to coming up in 2022? So let's just keep moving forward. So Gabe, with that in mind, what sort of takeaways have you gotten from this podcast over the past 37 episodes? Yeah. And how are you hoping to shape that into the next year?
Well, I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned in 2021 with regards to pop culture and this podcast is we were very fortunate to speak to a lot of creators, a lot of writers, artists, designers, people that are leaders within their film and their industry, right? And the thing that really spoke to me is that they have a very honest voice. They speak to their experience, whether it be a plus size person and the body acceptance movement, whether it be as a Latinx person, a gay Latinx person, a Cuban American person, an ex-military, a veteran, all the different people that we've had on the show, and they've all brought their experience into their world or into their industry and their work, and been able to create something that they kind of were looking for in the world. They wanted to see fashion that was ethical, that was designed for people of all sizes. So they went out and did it. They wanted to see comics that were science fiction mixed with fantasy, but also had characters that were Latinx. So they did it. And that inspired me that, for many years, as someone who has like such been a fan of pop culture, I've always been very hopeful. Like, okay, I hope that the MCU brings in a Mexican superhero. I hope that I get to see a comic book that has more Latinos in it. And now I realize, like, okay, if you want to see that, put the work out, create it. Unfortunately, Hollywood or Marvel or DC or the fashion industry, they're not gonna necessarily do what you want or what you need. So maybe the choice for you is to go out and do it yourself and become the hero for other people. If you want to see a comic book that you want to read, go and make the comic book that you want to read. If you want to see a certain particular garment, create the garment that you want to see at the store. And so it's been really inspiring for me. I think that I've changed my direction within photography yet again, to be a little bit more honest to what my interests are versus wanting to edit my voice to be more marketable or to be more digestible for the mass audience. And I think that I've gotten a fairly positive reaction to what I've put out thus far. Cool. And it's because I think that I'm being honest with what I want to put out, and I'm not editing myself, and I'm not fearful of what other people will respond, because I'm like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's it. But I want to put out the content that I want to see, and hopefully it will find an audience. And I think that that's what people respond to, is when they see that you're passionate about something or that you're speaking from an honest place, as opposed to like trying to create work that you think people want from you. And so that's what I've learned in 2021 is like, do what you want to do, create the work that you want to see. If it's not out there, do it. Whether it be comedy, fashion. I mean, we talked to so many interesting people that have created such interesting work that represent so many different facets of our community. And it's been really inspiring for me, and taught me a lot, even at this old age, to be able to take their experiences and the lessons that they're teaching us and implement it into my own life. So yeah, that's cool. What I've learned. How about you?
Very cool. Well, for me, I mean, I think back to our first episode when we talked about what does pop culture mean to us. And I said that, it's like a sense of getting together over common things. So even if we come from various backgrounds, we might have an enjoyment over a Marvel movie or a Batman movie coming out. So we can leave those differences aside and come together and view that. And that's what pop culture means to me. And I think throughout this year, and we've talked to so many various people with so many various viewpoints, that it just really heightened that even more, because what one person's perception of how a story goes, or their take on pop culture, not even pop culture, just what their story is and what they want to tell, is completely different from the other person that we talked to, but both of them are right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, like you said, it's their experiences. And the fact that they're brave enough to share those experiences and share their viewpoints and their story with us and the rest of the world is just so motivating to me, because I personally, I feel like I have a lot I want to tell, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I've been silencing my own voice for too long because I don't feel like it may fit in with anyone out there. But who cares if it does or doesn't? If I have a story I want to tell, go tell it. And at least I would be able to release that story, and, and if it finds a home, great. If not, at least I would telling my voice. So I think that's what I learned the most, is to be able not to silence myself, or, like you said, edit, or not to mute myself, and just to go for it and just do it.
Yeah. And how great that we've had this platform to be able to share our opinions over the last year. Over 38 episodes of this podcast, we've been able to share our opinions, our perspective, our some of our life stories, our where we come from, how we view things.
Yeah.
And it's helped me. It's helped me open up, I think, even more to share what I think about things and not be afraid of the consequences of people thinking that you're weird or different or whatever. Because I think that everyone does it. Everyone's kind of slightly afraid of being outside of what's normal. And but the people that are groundbreaking, the people that actually create and contribute to society in a positive way are the ones that are unafraid to go against the stream and are groundbreakers. So I don't know. I'm that's what I'm excited for 2022. There's a lot of stuff that I want to create and accomplish, and I'm excited to see the work of other people. That's another lesson that I've learned, is that, and I think that I've done this a lot in the past to a certain extent, but more so now and in the future, really being supportive of other creators and other artists, and making sure that you support their artwork just as much as you want to receive support. And so, when I see someone doing a great job, whether it be in writing or film or poetry or whatever, like, I am making a conscientious effort to be vocal about, how much I like their stuff, if I can, buying it, and allowing them to move forward within their career, because it's so important that we support those people versus, just supporting Marvel or Fox or Disney. There's lots of, people that are creating things on a local level that are great, that are genius, that are brilliant, that need to know what they're doing is really great and need our support. So that's something else that I'll continue to do in the future in 2022.
That's very
which
important.
Seems insane. It sounds insane to be saying that 2022, but
are we going to say 2022 or are we going to say 2022?
I'm saying 2022. Is it 2022?
I like the ring of 2022. We'll have a fight about it. I don't know.
I don't know. I never really thought about it. I just 2022. I mean, I don't know. The thing that makes me kind of blows my mind is that I know that other generations will be looking back at us the way that I looked at people who lived during the 20s, and how odd,
yeah, I know what you mean. What you mean.
We're like the Groucho Marx and the silent movie era of the people in the future that will be looking back at the 20s. That's crazy to me.
It is crazy. You're absolutely right. I mean, think about it. Our podcast, should it live on forever, when people in 80 years from now, or even 50 years from now, will be like, what are they doing? What are you talking about? And they're because now they probably don't have screens. It's all inputs directly into their brain or something. It's just I don't know. It's just going to be.
They'll just be plugged into the Matrix directly.
Exactly.
Getting pumped, marketed commercials, and I don't know, being their energy and blood being produced into some sort of product that companies can sell, or I don't know, something weird.
It's just real on a tangent real quick. It's California. I was reading about California new law about composting. And I guess you guys in California now have to compost starting in January of 2022.
Yeah.
See, not 2022, 2022, where you have to separate your food waste from regular waste. And I was reading a little bit about the science behind it, and it's fascinating because when food waste is mixed in with the regular garbage, it creates more methane gas, which we know is a very negative climate change gas, think like cow farts, right? So when they separate it out, they can take that carbon and put it back into the earth, or B, capture it and use that gas to fuel the garbage trucks of the future.
Huh.
So it's like a full cycle thing. So I thought that was really fascinating. So it's really cool. I wish they would do something like that here in Nevada, but it's really cool. So just a little, the more you know moment.
Yeah, like maybe they could recycle all the bullshit that like Republicans and conservatives create in the world.
I don't think there's a landfill big enough for that.
Recycle it into like a machine that, I don't know, does something positive in the world. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, I'm super stoked for 2022. I'm really excited. Yeah. Hopefully everyone is healthy and this pandemic thing gets put to bed and is under wraps. I'm exhausted from it. And so hopefully just nothing but positivity for everyone, all our listeners and subscribers, for us and for you. Hopefully lots of really positive and good things come out of next year. And yeah, I know there's going to be a lot of good pop culture coming out. So yeah, that's something to look forward to, right?
Right. So everyone have a happy and safe new year, and we will catch you next year.
2022.
2022.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you.